Hey, welcome back to another episode of Rubber Suit Reminisce, the first one where I'm on camera, and the first time in a while that I've been on camera, not for a reason of, hiding or whatever. I've just been too lazy to set up the camera, because what I used to do was record with, a webcam, but I did buy an actual camera back at my old place a couple years ago, and I've been too lazy to set it up, but I'm fixing that now, and so hopefully I'll actually remember to show up on camera fairly often. So you get to see my ugly mug all the time now. Anyway, the topic of this video, if you couldn't tell by reading the title or by looking at my desktop back there, is Shuriken Sentai Ninninger, which I just finished pretty recently. A little bit late on the train because it was currently airing when I started getting into Toku, but it was basically almost over at that point. And I had watched a little bit of it. I saw the first 10 or so episodes, I think, and I enjoyed it then. And I figured when I'd get back to it, I would like it. It hasn't had a good representation. It hasn't had a good reputation, is the word I was trying to say. But I still figured I'd probably enjoy it because I'm just a pot of unpopular opinions, basically, even though I hate having them. But having now finished it, I can say I did not like Ninninger. Not even a little bit. The premise of the series follows this family of ninjas, or ninjas in training, essentially, and their quest to become the last ninja, because their grandfather is currently the last ninja. Yes, even though there are other ninjas, he's still called the last ninja. It's a weird thing, and I don't really even care about the terminology. It's just part of it. The only one who really cares, though, honestly, about it is the Red Takaharu, and he gets a lot of the focus because it's Sentai, and the Red is basically the main out of all of them. Even though technically all of them are supposed to get focus, but usually the Red is the one that gets most of it, because he's the Red. And Takaharu has gotten kind of infamous in the Toku community for being very annoying, and he is. He's quite irritating, but everybody's so busy talking about how annoying Takaharu is that they overlook a far more irritating character, the physical incarnation of annoyance that is Yakumo, our ninja. He's the blue, so his two character traits are limited to either the nerd or the stoic, doesn't really talk a whole lot, or does talk a whole lot but doesn't show a lot of emotion, sort of cool guy. And Yakumo falls into that latter category, complete with smug attitude, but he's the worst kind of smug character. Think of, smug characters you like. For a Toku comparison, Captain Marvelous from Gokaiger, or, Tsukasa from Kamen Rider Decade, and think about what made them still entertaining despite the fact that they were complete dicks to everybody. It's because they were still entertaining, and there was some charm to their personality that kept them interesting. Yakumo doesn't have that. Yakumo's just kind of smug and annoying, and he's... I don't know how quite to put it into words, but he's just one of those characters that irritates you for reasons you can't quite articulate, but you still have a basic idea of why. He's smug, but he doesn't have the actual, charm to back it up, so he's just an irritating dick. The other ninjas are pretty forgettable. I couldn't really tell you anything about Kasumi or Fuka or Nagi, other than his episodes were always incredibly boring. The only other one of the ninjas that is even worth really mentioning is the sixth, Star Ninja. Kinji Takigawa is an American-born ninja, and hailing from America, I should mention before I get into this, to really give you an idea what he's like, he learned to speak Japanese from watching old samurai movies, so that's the kind of person he is. And his suit, as I'm probably showing on screen right now, obviously is themed off of a cowboy. It's glorious. He transforms using a hamburger, because of course he does. His weapon is a gun sword that is also a guitar, and a lot of his music is rock and roll themed. He talks about rock and roll a lot. He's entertaining. He's the weirdo, kind of goofball, insane guy, and he'll randomly say things in English. Usually it's what, or oh no, or yeehaw. Usually that's yeehaw more often than anything else. And he's the only really entertaining member of the Ninjas. He starts off really interesting because he's actually actively fighting against the Ninjas so he can become the student of their grandfather. It sort of works out like that in the end, but not quite the way he wanted it to. But that's not super important anyway, because the plot in Ninninger doesn't really matter. But I'll get to that in a second. Star Ninja has a couple of interesting episodes. There's one where he's turning into a yokai, which are the monsters of the series, and that's a pretty good episode. But for the most part, his interesting episodes are limited to his debut and the first handful of episodes he shows up in, and then he has really good moments throughout the series that are just amazing. He's really the only saving grace of the main team, honestly, because everybody else is just terrible. On the other side, though, you have the villains who exist. Yeah, none of them are really particularly notable. And I should mention, by the way, I talked in the Q Ranger video that I have lower standards for Sentai. Not that Sentai is always necessarily worse, but I just expect different things from Sentai because it's made for a really young audience. Ninninger doesn't meet those expectations or standards in really any capacity. It's got bland characters where, even in the best Sentai, you can usually call a character's traits based on the color that they are in the team. Like I said with Yakumo, he's the blue, and the blues are usually relegated to either being dorky nerds or the cool guys. Even in a series where you can do that in basically every show, the characters are completely bland and unremarkable. So and that in itself is remarkable, to be able to create boring characters that do not meet the standards of just the most basic character traits you could possibly imagine. And the villains are much the same. They're just sort of the revive Kiboni Gengetsu and get us to control the world. Brr. Nobody's really particularly interesting. The first general that they revive, I can't remember his name, has this interesting weird thing with Akaninger, where he's trying to duel him. If you remember, like, Decker in Power Rangers Samurai, it's basically that same thing. I don't know if that was the thing in Shinkenger, because I haven't seen Shinkenger, but from what I understand, Shinkenger and Samurai are basically the same show, so it probably was a thing there. But that guy's role is much the same, where he just wants to fight the Red, and that's about the extent of it, and then he dies, and then the next general shows up. It's by the numbers, not interesting in any capacity for Sentai, even. It's, Ninninger's not particularly good. The plot is bare bones. It's literally just stop the bad guys. Usually, there's at least something interesting about the villains. Like, say what you will about Zyuohger for being basic, at least the villains aren't just the regular take over the world thing. They're running this, like, death game, blood sport thing, hunting people, essentially, and that's interesting and different and cool. The villains in Ninninger are just revive the master and then we can take over the world. Brr. Not interesting in any capacity. The only really good things I can say about Ninninger as a show are the music is really good, the opening and the ED are some of the best in Sentai history. The insert songs, especially Star Ninja's theme, is really good. And the background music is also very nice. So music-wise, the show's top-notch. Also, suit design-wise, for the most part, it's pretty good. The main Ninningers are really good. A lot of the monster designs are good, even if their characters aren't terrible. The suit designs for the monsters are still very nice. Especially one of the first ones that shows up. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a tiger with like claws and on roller skates. It's kind of weird. And then a lot of the mech suits are actually quite bad. Basic Shuriken is alright. King Shuriken is really good, the one that fuses with the Star Ninja mech. Lion Hao is good. Their second to last mech that I can't remember the name of is really nice, but then that mech fuses with Lion Hao into this awful thing that is on screen right now, and it's one of the worst Sentai mechs I think I've ever seen. It's basically just this giant hunk, and it doesn't even like move. Essentially, what it does is it swivels and is on wheels and everything. It's kind of hilarious when it will finish a monster and then just sort of swivel around to the camera rather than actually turning like a mech usually does. But it's the other mechs are still very nice and more than make up for the terrible ones. Especially Shuriken's mechs. Bison King is really nice, as well as just Rodeo Maru in general, because he comes in riding on a four-wheeler. Everything about Star Ninja is ridiculous and amazing, and I love it. So, yeah. Those are the good parts of Ninninger, music and most of the suit designs. The bad parts are pretty much everything else. It's not really a show that I'd recommend. If you enjoy it, then cool. I'm actually quite jealous because I could not. It was insane how bad it got at some points. There's one particular moment of the show being terrible and showcasing how dumb Takaharu is. That comes from nearing the end. It's in like the 30s, I think. This particular episode featured the Ninjers turning themselves into toys so they could get into a school where a yokai was, using the ending dance, the one that they performed during the ED, to lure the kids away from the school where the yokai is. And that's not the first time they'd even used the ending dance as a plot point. They'd done it way back in like the 11th episode. To get some people out of being depressed. One of those being one of the mechs. One of the mechs was depressed. It was weird. And then the bus that the kids are on is attacked by the yokai, and it gets a shuriken in it that is making it go wild throughout town, and Takaharu's on there. And he manages to get the shuriken out of the bus, so it stops. And somehow, I still am not entirely sure how he pulled this off. As he's walking out of the bus down the stairs, the 3 steps out of a bus. In the process of doing that, he managed to jam the shuriken in his forehead and then ran wild throughout the town, and the other ninjas had to save him. I can't even really properly formulate a reaction to that. And when my actual live reaction was something akin to just screaming like a madman, trying to comprehend what was going on. Ninninger was not an enjoyable experience. I wanted to go into it, I go into things thinking I'll probably like them. I used to not do that, but now I go into things thinking I'm probably going to like them, and usually I do. I like a lot of things. Ninninger proved me wrong. I did not like it. It wasn't good. It's not a show I would personally recommend. If you've watched literally every other Sentai, maybe go watch Buddha Man instead. Make it maybe like the last bit of Toku you ever watch right before you die. Actually, don't do that. Maybe end with like a good Toku, like Gaim or something. So yeah, Ninninger isn't good. That's my take on it. That's about going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed, then you can subscribe, and hopefully YouTube will tell you when I upload a new video, but they don't like to do that. So instead, I post when I upload every time on my Twitter, which is linked in the description, as well as my Patreon, which I use as a tip jar, because one, I don't have the viewership to sustain myself on Patreon, but also I feel like right now if I said, go give me money so I can live, then I feel like it's a begging thing. So if you just like my content and want to give me a couple dollars to support, then you can, but you don't have to. So there's that. Alternatively, if you want to watch some of the other stuff that I've done, then on screen right now are 2 of my previous videos. On one side, I'm not sure if it's this one, is the last video I did, which I can't remember what it is right now. And then on the other side is one that YouTube decides it wants you to watch right now, which hopefully won't be one of my older terrible ones. That's all for now, and I will see you guys next time.